You step out onto your apartment balcony and it's just, well, it's usually this bare 4 by 8 foot slab of concrete, right?
Yeah, totally suspended in midair.
Exactly. And maybe you've got like a rusty folding chair out there or that bicycle you haven't ridden in, I mean, what, 3 years?
Right, the classic balcony storage unit.
Yeah. And you look at that space and think there is absolutely no way anything living could thrive out here. It just feels so sterile.
It really does. It feels completely disconnected from nature. I mean, it's a very common feeling for anyone living in a city.
We just have this ingrained idea of what a garden is.
Yeah, we tend to view gardens as these sprawling, earthbound things. Like you need half an acre of land and decades of generational wisdom just to keep a plant alive.
Right, like you need a farming background.
Exactly. That concrete slab just doesn't fit the mental image of a lush ecosystem at all.
But framing it that way is actually what's holding us back. Think about that very specific type of dread that comes with bringing home a flat pack furniture box.
Oh, I know that dread intimately.
Right, you stare at this dense, heavy pile of wooden boards and like a terrifying unlabeled bag of loose screws.
And you just assume you lack the engineering degree required to build a bookshelf.
Yes. But then, you force yourself to look at the instructions, you pick up the hex key, you attach board A to board B.
And suddenly it's not an intimidating mystery anymore.
Exactly. It's just a process. And it turns out that empty, bare slab of concrete hanging off the side of your apartment is exactly the same thing.
That is honestly a brilliant way to approach this material today. Our mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle that intimidation factor.
Yes, let's take the fear out of it.
We are looking at a beginner's guide to balcony gardening, and we're drawing from a collection of sources that prove you really do not need a sprawling backyard.
Or some mythical green thumb, right?
Right. You just need to understand the basic mechanics of, well, how plants function in a contained environment.
So we are going to decode the logic behind transforming that tiny outdoor space into a source of, food, flowers, and fresh air for you.
We are essentially going to assemble a piece of living furniture.
I love that. But before we get to the aesthetic part, like picking out the beautiful plants, we have to build the literal foundation.
Yeah, we need to gather our materials first.
Right. And when we are dealing with a balcony, our most crucial piece of infrastructure is the container itself.
The container really dictates everything that happens next. And the sources draw a very sharp contrast here.
Between the heavy clay pots and the plastic ones, right?
Exactly. You might picture those traditional heavy clay pots in a Mediterranean villa, but for a beginner on a balcony, plastic is undeniably the superior choice.
I have to admit there is a certain romanticism to those big terracotta clay pots. They just look so authentic.
They do, but the physical reality of lugging a 50-pound clay pot up 3 flights of apartment stairs, man, it sounds miserable.
Sounds like a workout I don't want to do.
It is miserable. And it's also a serious structural concern. Balconies actually have weight limits.
All right. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, wet soil is already incredibly heavy, so adding thick clay to the equation is just unnecessary. Plastic pots are lightweight, they're inexpensive, and crucially, they hold moisture much longer.
Wait, clay doesn't hold moisture well?
Not at all. Unglazed clay is porous, so it breathes. On a windy, sunny balcony, a clay pot will dry out your soil in a matter of hours.
Oh, wow. So plastic is actually more forgiving.
Very much so. It gives you a forgiving, affordable, and easily movable foundation.
Which brings us to what actually goes inside that plastic pot. And this is where I initially found the source material a bit confusing.
How so?
Well, the guides explicitly state that you must purchase special potting soil from a garden center or supermarket.
Right, that's strict rule.
But I live right across the street from a massive public park. My initial instinct is to just, take a 5-gallon bucket over there, scoop up some free dirt, and bring it home.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Why is street dirt banned from the balcony? I mean, dirt is dirt, isn't it?
Because dirt from the ground and potting soil are entirely different structural materials. Taking dirt from the park is, honestly, the #1 beginner trap.
Really? It guarantees failure.
Pretty much. You have to think about the physics of a plastic pot. It is a completely closed, artificial environment.
Meaning the water has literally nowhere to go.
Exactly. In the earth, water drains away through capillary action deep into the subsoil. Worms and insects constantly aerate the ground, keeping it loose.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you take that same dense topsoil and shovel it into a plastic bucket, it compacts. When you add water, it just turns into a solid brick of mud.
Oh, wow. A literal mud brick.
Yeah. The roots of your plant will suffocate because they can't get any oxygen and the water just cannot drain.
So what exactly is inside a bag of commercial potting soil that prevents that mud brick effect? Is it even actual dirt?
Surprisingly, no. A lot of high-quality potting soil doesn't contain any actual field soil at all.
Really? Then what is it?
It's an engineered mix. It usually contains things like peat moss or cocoa coir, which basically hold on to moisture like a sponge.
Oh,
And it's mixed with perlite. Have you ever noticed those tiny white styrofoam-looking balls in potted plants?
yes. I always wondered what those were. I honestly assumed it was some kind of slow-release fertilizer or something.
A lot of people think that, but it's actually a type of volcanic glass that has been heated until it pops, almost like popcorn.
Wait, volcanic glass? That's wild.
Yeah, it's incredibly light and creates thousands of tiny air pockets in the soil. And those air pockets are vital.
Because they let their roots breathe.
Exactly. They ensure that even when the soil is completely wet, water can drain through and oxygen can still reach the plant's root system. You're really paying for that specific aerated structure.
Okay, that makes the no park dirt rule incredibly logical. We aren't just buying dirt, we are buying an engineered drainage system.
That's a perfect way to phrase it.
So we have our plastic pot and our aerated potting soil. Next up is the living component. The sources strongly advise against starting from seeds, right?
They do. They recommend that beginners buy small, already growing plants from a nursery instead.
Which is interesting because seeds seem so cheap and easy.
Starting from seeds is a wonderful, rewarding process. But, well, it requires a level of environmental control that a beginner simply doesn't have set up yet.
Right, because they're so fragile.
Exactly. A tiny seed is vulnerable to slight temperature changes, minor overwatering, or even just a single strong gust of wind on a balcony.
It's like opting to mill your own lumber instead of buying the pre-cut boards for our flat pack furniture.
Yes. Why make the hardest part of the process the very first thing you do?
That makes total sense. You want a quick win.
Buying a mature baby plant means you are purchasing an established root system. The nursery has already done the delicate work of nursing it through its most fragile weeks of life.
You're basically buying a head start and a much larger margin for error. All right, to finish out our blueprint of essentials, we just need a way to deliver water. And the sources note you don't even need a fancy watering can. A simple cup works fine.
A cup from your kitchen is perfect.
But then we need sunlight, and the type of sunlight mentioned in the sources really caught my attention.
The morning sun recommendation.
Yeah, they don't just say put it in the sun. They specifically highlight morning sun as the ideal scenario for most balcony plants. What is the distinction there?
Well, the distinction lies in the intensity and the heat.
Mm-hmm.
Morning sun is often described as soft because of the angle of the Earth at that time.
Oh, because it's lower in the sky.
Right. The light is passing through more of the atmosphere, which scatters some of the intensity. Plus, the ambient temperature of the air is still cool from the night before.
So the plant gets the light it needs for photosynthesis without just being baked alive by the heat.
Exactly. When a plant sits in harsh, direct midday or afternoon sun, the heat causes it to lose moisture rapidly through its leaves.
Oh, like it's drying out.
Yeah, it's a process called transpiration. It's essentially the plant sweating. Morning sun gives the plant the energy it needs to grow without forcing it into a stressful state of water conservation.
Okay, so we have our infrastructure completely mapped out. Plastic pots, engineered soil, mature baby plants, and gentle morning sun.
The foundation is solidly set.
But now we face the psychological hurdle, right? Choosing the plant. I think this is where the flat pack analogy breaks down for a lot of people.
Because a wooden shelf can't die on you.
Exactly. A plant can actively die on you if you pick the wrong one.
And many beginners unwittingly set themselves up for failure here. They choose a plant based purely on aesthetics at the garden center.
Oh, I've done that. You see a cool leaf and just buy it.
Right, only to discover it requires, like, high humidity, specific soil pH, and constant pruning. For your first balcony garden, you want to curate a collection of highly resilient, forgiving varieties.
Well, the sources outline 3 specific avenues for beginners that seem practically bulletproof. Let's start with the culinary route, herbs.
Herbs are great.
And sweet basil seems to be the prime recommendation.
Herbs are an excellent starting point because the feedback loop is just so rapid. Basil is an incredibly aggressive grower.
Meaning it bounces back fast.
Yeah, once it establishes its roots in your potting soil, it pushes out new leaves constantly. You get to see the tangible results of your care on a daily basis.
Not to mention the sensory payoff. the volatile oils that give basil its incredible smell. I mean,
Yeah.
those are actually natural compounds the plant
It
produces.
smells amazing.
And you can harvest it right there on your balcony, to throw onto a pizza or salad. It bridges the gap between the natural world and your kitchen.
It completely changes your relationship with your food when you've managed the ecosystem that actually produced it.
I love that. But what if the culinary aspect doesn't appeal to you? Like if you just want visual impact?
Then the second highly recommended category is flowers, specifically marigolds.
Marigolds, those are those incredibly vibrant orange and yellow blooms, right?
Yep, they are gorgeous.
But beyond looking nice, what makes them suitable for a harsh, concrete balcony?
Their sheer biological toughness. I mean, marigolds evolved to handle poor soil and inconsistent moisture.
So they can take a bit of neglect.
Absolutely. While many decorative flowers will wilt dramatically if you miss a single watering, a marigold will happily tolerate a beginner's learning curve.
That's reassuring.
Yeah, they typically only require watering every 2 to 3 days, and their root systems are robust enough to bounce back if the soil dries out a bit.
I definitely appreciate a plant that doesn't demand my constant, undivided attention. But, what if you want something even more hands-off?
For the truly forgetful gardener,
Yeah, something for the notoriously busy individual who might travel for a week.
then you completely bypass the leafy herbs and delicate flowers and look at the third category, succulents.
Ah, succulents. They seem to be everywhere now. They're the undisputed champions for the hands-off gardener, right?
Absolutely.
They have those distinctively thick, fleshy leaves. I assume that physical shape is directly related to why they only need water once a week, or sometimes even less.
It is entirely related. Succulents are evolutionary marvels adapted for arid, completely hostile environments.
Wow.
Those thick, fleshy leaves aren't just decorative. They're specialized storage organs. When you water a succulent, it rapidly absorbs as much moisture as possible and stores it in a spongy tissue inside the leaf.
So it's essentially stockpiling rations for later.
Yes, and the outside of the leaf is covered in a thick, waxy cuticle that acts like a sealant.
Oh, to keep the water from evaporating.
Exactly. It prevents that stored water from escaping into the air. So while a basil plant is constantly cycling water through its thin leaves, a succulent just locks it away.
That's incredible. You are dealing with a plant that has engineered its own internal drought management system.
Exactly. They do all the work.
So they really are the camels of the balcony plant world. They do the heavy lifting of water management so you don't have to.
That is a perfect analogy.
Okay, we've selected our resilient Prue. We have fast-growing basil, tough marigolds, and self-sustaining succulents. We have the pots and the soil. Now comes the moment of truth, the assembly.
The fun part.
The physical act of taking the plant out of its temporary nursery container and putting it into its permanent home. That step always makes me nervous.
It can feel delicate, but the mechanics are really straightforward. You start by taking your new plastic pot and filling it with that specialized potting soil until it is about 3/4 of the way full.
Why only 3/4?
Well, you don't want to fill it to the brim or the water will just spill right over the edge when you try to hydrate it. You need a little basin at the top.
Okay, that makes sense. And then we have to perform the extraction. How delicate do we actually need to be when pulling the baby plant out of its plastic sleeve?
You want to be firm but gentle. The goal is to keep the existing root mass, which often holds the shape of the nursery pot, as intact as possible.
Right, so you don't want to rip the roots apart.
No, definitely not. You squeeze the sides of the nursery pot a bit to loosen the soil, turn it slightly sideways, and just slide the plant out.
You don't yank it by the stem.
Never pull it from the top of the stem. If you do, you risk snapping the main conduit for the plant's nutrients, which can be fatal.
Good to know. So you rest that intact root ball on the 3/4 bed of soil in your new pot. And the final assembly step is just backfilling, right? Pouring more soil around the sides to lock it in place.
Correct. You fill in the gaps around the edges until the roots are completely covered. And then you press the top of the soil softly with your fingers.
Softly being the key word there.
Yes, the pressure is just to eliminate any huge air pockets and secure the plant's posture. You aren't trying to pack it down into concrete.
Because we want to maintain that airy structure we talked about earlier with the perlite.
Exactly.
Okay, so the plant is housed, the furniture is assembled, now we have to maintain it. And I think the biggest anxiety point for any new gardener is the watering schedule.
Oh, definitely. Everyone wants a rigid schedule.
Right, but the sources use a great phrase here. The soil should be wet, but not a swimming pool. We know now that a swimming pool means the roots are drowning in our plastic pot. But how do we actually gauge that moisture without a strict calendar schedule?
You really have to abandon the idea of a calendar. A plant's water needs change based on humidity, wind, and temperature.
So what's the alternative?
The most sophisticated moisture sensor you have is just your index finger. The sources recommend checking every couple of days simply by pushing your finger about an inch into the soil.
Just feeling around in the dirt.
Yeah. If the soil beneath the surface feels dry to the touch, you add water. If it still feels moist, you just walk away.
That requires trusting your own observation, which can be scary. But what if we misjudge it? This leads to one of the most fascinating concepts in the material. The idea that plants provide a real-time visual status update of their health.
They absolutely do.
They literally show you what is going wrong through their leaves.
Understanding this changes gardening from a stressful guessing game into a dialogue. The plant reacts to its environment physiologically, and those reactions are highly readable.
Let's decode the two most common distress signals. The first one is yellowing leaves. Let's say my bright green basil suddenly starts turning pale yellow at the base. What is the actual mechanism happening there?
Yellow leaves are the classic symptom of hypoxia, which is a lack of oxygen to the roots, and that almost always means you are overwatering.
Ah, so it's drowning.
Yes. When the soil is overly saturated, the roots can't breathe. If they can't breathe, they begin to shut down and can no longer absorb nitrogen from the soil.
And nitrogen is important for the color.
Nitrogen is essential for creating chlorophyll, which is exactly what makes a plant green.
So the yellowing is literally the plant losing its green pigment because the drowning roots can't send up the necessary building blocks.
Precisely. The visual signal of yellow essentially means, let me dry out so I can breathe again.
That is so cool. It's like a color-coded warning light on a dashboard.
Yeah.
Okay, the second major signal is drooping. The leaves look sad, soft, and limp. I always just assumed the plant was, like, tired. But there is actual physics behind a droop, isn't there?
Oh yeah, it's a loss of hydraulic pressure. Plants maintain their structure through something called turgor pressure.
Turgor pressure.
Right. They pump water into their cells, and that internal water pressure is what keeps the stems and leaves rigid and standing up straight.
Okay, I follow.
When the soil dries out completely, the plant has to use up its internal water reserves, the pressure drops, and the cells literally deflate.
Oh, it's exactly like a balloon losing air.
That's exactly what it is. The droop is a mechanical failure due to a lack of fluid, and the solution is immediate. Just provide water to restore that pressure.
That is so simple once you understand the physics. We check the soil, we watch for yellowing, we watch for drooping. We are just responding to the plant's data.
It's all about observation.
And alongside water, the sources briefly mention feeding the plants. But it sounds incredibly low effort.
It really is. Potting soil eventually runs out of the base nutrients, like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, that the plant consumes to grow.
Right, because it's in a closed pot.
Exactly. But to replenish it, you don't need a complex chemistry set. You just buy a basic liquid plant food.
And how often do we use it?
You mix a few drops into your watering cup just once a month, and that provides all the elemental building blocks the plant needs to push out new leaves.
A few drops a month. That is a completely manageable maintenance routine for anyone.
Very manageable.
But let's be realistic here. Even if you follow the blueprint perfectly, nature is unpredictable. You are introducing a biological element into an urban environment, and things will inevitably go off script.
Oh, troubleshooting is just part of the process. The difference between a successful gardener and someone who gives up is simply how they react when a problem arises.
Well, the sources outline 3 highly common curveballs and provide the exact mechanisms to solve them without panicking.
Let's hear them.
The first curveball is the one that sends most people running back inside. Bugs.
The dreaded pests.
Right. You walk out to your balcony, check your beautiful basil, and realize there is a colony of tiny insects colonizing the underside of the leaves. Instinct says to just throw the whole pot into the dumpster.
It's a very visceral reaction, but totally unnecessary. And you don't need toxic industrial pesticides either.
Really? What do we use?
The solution relies on exploiting the biology of the insect using regular, everyday household liquid hand soap.
Hand soap. You mix a few drops of soap with water in a spray bottle, spray the leaves, and wipe them down. But why does that actually work? How does hand soap kill a bug without harming the delicate plant?
It all comes down to the insect's exoskeleton. Soft-bodied insects, like aphids, are covered in a protective waxy coating.
Okay, like a shield.
Yeah, and that wax keeps their internal moisture locked inside their bodies. Dish soap, or hand soap, is chemically designed to cut through grease and wax.
Oh, so when the soapy water hits the bug, it strips away that protective layer.
Exactly. It completely dissolves their armor. Without that waxy cuticle, the insect rapidly loses its internal moisture to the air and basically dehydrates on the spot.
Wow. It is incredibly effective chemical warfare against the pest, but to the plant, which has a totally different cellular structure, it's just a mild bath that easily washes off.
Right, the plant doesn't mind it at all.
It's like a mild bouncer for your plant club, you know? It keeps the riffraff out without damaging the venue.
That is hilarious, but very accurate.
Okay, insect invasion neutralized. Let's look at a completely different kind of problem. What happens when the plant is doing too well? You look at it and the roots are starting to poke out of the drainage holes at the bottom of the pot, or the plant just looks massively top-heavy.
We have to reframe this one entirely.
Yeah.
A plant outgrowing its pot is not a problem. It is the ultimate success metric.
Because it means you did a good job.
Exactly. You provided an environment so optimal that the plant has literally maxed out its real estate. However, it does require intervention.
Because if it stays in a pot that is too small, the roots start circling around the inside of the plastic, right? They essentially choke themselves.
Yes, it becomes what we call root-bound. The roots replace the soil entirely, meaning there's no longer any material left to hold water or nutrients.
Ah, so it starves even if you water it.
Right. The solution is straightforward, though.
Right.
You just buy a plastic pot that is 1 or 2 inches larger in diameter, and you repeat the exact same assembly process.
A layer of fresh soil, gentle extraction, place the root ball in the new pot, and backfill.
Exactly. You were just giving the root system a bigger basement to expand into.
That sounds easy enough. The final troubleshooting scenario concerns our resilient marigolds. Let's say the plant is growing, the leaves are vibrant green, the stems are thick, it looks perfectly healthy.
But no flowers.
Right. It refuses to produce a single orange or yellow flower. It's just a nice green bush. What is the disconnect there?
When a healthy plant refuses to flower, you are almost always dealing with an environmental imbalance that is causing the plant to prioritize survival over reproduction.
Because a flower takes a massive amount of energy to produce.
Huge amounts of energy. So if the plant doesn't feel perfectly secure, it hoards its energy for its leaves and roots instead.
That makes biological sense. What causes that insecurity?
The sources point to 2 main culprits. The first is inadequate sunlight. Even if the plant has enough light to survive and grow green leaves, it might not have the surplus energy required to push out a bloom.
So moving it to a spot on the balcony that catches a few more hours of that morning sun can trigger the flowering process.
Yes, that often does the trick. And the second culprit is our old enemy, overwatering.
Too much water stops flowers.
Yeah. If a plant has an endless, abundant supply of water, it often focuses on rapid vegetative growth, just pushing out more and more green leaves.
Interesting.
By slightly dialing back the watering, you create a very mild natural stress. That slight stress signals to the plant it's time to reproduce and create seeds before the water runs out, which it does by flowering.
Wow. It is all about finding that slight calibration. A little less water, a little more sun, and the plant responds exactly how you want it to.
And that really underscores the entire philosophy of this deep dive. Balcony gardening isn't some dark art. It is highly accessible.
It really is. You need very few items. An inexpensive plastic pot, a bag of aerated soil, a mature baby plant, and a cup of water.
That's the entire starter kit.
You curate resilient options that match your environment, and you learn to read the physical feedback the plant gives you. It's supposed to be an engaging, relaxing process.
Absolutely. Having even one small patch of green out on that concrete slab bridges the gap between the urban environment and the natural world. It's good for your mental health.
It really is. So we have a small, immediate challenge for you, the listener. As soon as this deep dive ends, take 30 seconds and step out onto your balcony or your patio or whatever small slice of outdoor space you have.
Just take a look around.
Don't look at it as a storage space for old bicycles anymore. Look at the corners, look at the ledges. Can you find space for just one medium-sized plastic pot? Just start there.
Start small. The scale of the space really doesn't matter. What matters is the introduction of that living element.
Because even one plant makes a difference.
It does. Because when you introduce that one plant, you are participating in something remarkably expansive. The sources briefly touch on the fact that plants improve the air we breathe, but if you scale that idea up to the size of a modern city, the implications are just staggering.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Imagine the sheer density of a massive metropolis. Millions of apartments stacked on top of each other. Millions of bare concrete balconies jutting out into the smog.
It's a lot of empty space.
If just a fraction of those apartment dwellers took this simple advice, if they bought one cheap plastic pot, filled it with aerated soil, and planted a single resilient herb or flower, the urban landscape would fundamentally change.
We wouldn't just be decorating our isolated outdoor closets.
Exactly. We would be collectively engineering a decentralized, vertically integrated canopy. Millions of individual leaves across thousands of high-rises, all quietly drawing in carbon dioxide, filtering out urban particulates, and releasing fresh oxygen.
It would be like a vast, fragmented superforest suspended hundreds of feet in the sky.
Transforming the microclimate of the concrete jungle through millions of tiny, disconnected acts of gardening, one cheap plastic pot at a time.